North Charleston businessman John Singletary wants to bring more jobs, affordable housing, and fairness to the constituents of North Charleston City Council's District 5. That's one of the reasons why he's running for North Charleston City Council. I talk one-on-one with John for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. John Singletary, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure to talk with you, Quintin.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it greatly. Needless to say, you are a longtime North Charleston resident and, of course, a businessman who we all know ran from North Charleston mayor in 2015, 2019, and 2023. But now you are actually running now for North Charleston City Council to represent the constituents of District 5. So tell me, John, what got you from running for mayor of North Charleston to now saying, hey, I want to represent the city with those residents in District 5 on City Council?
Well, one is I live in District 5, and as you know, we have a void there. We do not have a representative. The city council rep has resigned, and I'm all about making sure that I can contribute to making my community better. So whether that's as an individual citizen, whether it's as the mayor or as a city council person, I think what I offer to the community helps it to become a better community. And so I'm always a team player, and so I play whatever position I'm in. And in this case, it's going to be city council.
But let me ask you this then, John. Why didn't you run for city council in 2015, 2019, or 2023?
Because in those years, the mayor's position in terms of the election was available. I've always said that the position that I wanted for North Charleston is the mayor's position because I feel that I can contribute more to the city overall in that position. However, I live in District 5. We now have a void in District 5. So the mayor's position in this election is not available.
So you
it
still
is
do?
the city council position.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm running for city council.
So do you want to run for mayor next time?
I'll cross that bridge when I get there. I mean, I'm not sure, first of all, whether I'm going to even be the city council person, but in 2027, I'd have to take a look and see whether or not I feel that our community is getting its fair share of parity. If that's the case, then there is no need for me to, because I feel that our community is being treated fair. However, if it's a situation where I feel that I can contribute more, I'd have to see at that time whether or not it would be feasible to do it.
Now, you talked earlier, John, about obviously having a void in that particular district, District 5. So let me ask you, how do you make District 5 competitive today so that the rest of the city of North Charleston can be competitive tomorrow in South Carolina?
Well, the first thing that I do is I would come in, take a look at what is needed. You do a needs analysis. You find out from the constituents what it is, what is there in their community that they feel you could better serve them at doing. Like, for instance, some neighborhoods, in talking to the constituents, they want speed bumps because people speed up and down. Some neighborhoods want grocery stores. So, I would do the needs analysis first, and then based on that, we take whatever the best practices are, and we set a new standard so that the other districts, as well as across the state, would see the best way to do it. And then we partner with them in order to get it done.
I'm going to get to that in just a second. But what practices are ideal for your district right now?
Well, when it comes to integrity, transparency, accountability, we need to be able to go through and look at the spending transparency report, the implementation plan. We need to be able to see where every dollar is spent in the community. Federal funds coming in, whether it be the I-26, 526 widening, looking at the right-of-way schedule to see not only what properties are going to be affected, but also how much they're going to pay the people for their land. These are the kinds of things that I would take a look at in order to better serve the constituents.
Well, let me just jump right into the obvious, John. Would you actually ask for a forensic audit of that spending within the city of North Charleston?
Absolutely. I think that when we take a look at what has gone on in terms of the bribery, the corruption, and those kinds of things, and those people being integral in terms of the city's finances, it would be less than um, honorable. It would be less than um, doing my job if I were not to ask for an audit and a forensic audit, because we already see where there's been less than honesty when it came to the funding in the city. And to be able to get it on the right track, the only way to do that would be to come in and take a look at the books from a forensic standpoint so that we don't carry forward any bad dealings from the past, and that we start with a clean slate moving forward. That's the only way to restore the trust, the integrity, and the accountability within the North Charleston system as a whole.
John, when I go back and look at this whole scandal which transpired within the city of North Charleston government, from particularly with city council, how in the world did all of these city council members allegedly get access to this type of money?
Well, there are three things that, or two things at least, that are going on. One is the Baker Hospital deal. And whether we take a look at North Charleston specifically, or on the whole, what has happened across the state, it's the same thing, that votes are important to make things push through. When we look back at Operation Lost Trust, for instance, Operation Lost Trust was almost a cookie cut situation to what's happening today. Someone was willing to pay for votes from elected officials, and it's the very same thing that's happening now. Someone was willing to pay for votes from an elected official to push through some project that they desired. And anytime you have that, there's a potential for that to happen. The other thing that was mentioned that is being looked at is the gun violence situation, where funding was given, and as a result of the funding given, someone who was in control of making sure that people were able to get some of that funding, unfortunately, on the back end, wanted to benefit from it. And I think that is wrong. It's something that I would not do. It destroys the overall trust of the people for the office. And so that's what I'm there to restore. They got access to it simply because of the position.
Okay, who exactly do we know in the city of North Charleston who allegedly had access to this money to give to these nonprofit organizations to basically combat gun violence?
Well, when we take a look at the funding that's coming in, the funding that um, comes in, council is aware of it, as well as the mayor. Of course, the mayor's hand has changed since the initial funding came in, as well as its disbursement, but the very same people are involved. The mayor is paid to manage the funds of the city. So the mayor at the time received the funds, and whether he gave it through to someone else, delegated it for them to pass it out, or he himself did it, really doesn't matter, because he is the person who is paid to manage the funds at the city. And I say the same people being involved, because the former police chief, of course, was involved with the gun violence program because it came up under the police force. But that really is totally different than my initiatives that I'm going to institute at the city, which is, again, restore those things. Because there's nothing that can be done in terms of the past, and rectifying that for the city. The FBI is on the trail, and they're doing their job there, which is commendable. Our concentration moving forward would be to restore the trust and integrity of the political office to the citizens, so we can serve them.
So, John, let me ask you this then. Uh, how much money, well, how much funding was actually dispersed when it came to this gun violence grant?
Well, according to the papers, and that's all I can go by because I
Sure.
wasn't at the
Right.
table.
Right.
But it was about $1.3 million that went to about 13 organizations, them each receiving about $100,000 each. Um, and not only should it have been a situation where um, it was a phased process rather than all $100,000 at one time, but they received it in increments based on some type of checks and balance to make sure that the intent of the program was being done. That if the money was given to an individual or an organization for a specific purpose, then there should have been some measurements and milestones that you should have been able to see along the way, not just simply disperse money and then on the back end said that there was no checks and balances in order to protect the funding for citizens in North Charleston.
I'm glad you mentioned that because what I really wanted to ask you was this. I know that when I spoke with Mayor Reggie Burgess last summer for Quintin's Close-Ups, he basically says that they're going to actually disperse another batch of money to the nonprofit organizations. So if you become city council member, how exactly would you make certain that they spend this money accurately?
Well, I would come in to make sure that they set up a checks and balance system where you would, or at least I would put on the table as a motion, because as you know, each city council person gets a vote and it's a majority rule. But my suggestion would be that we take a look at checks and balances so that this misappropriation of funds as well as mismanagement of funds would not occur. If you have a program that is designed for an end result, there should be measurements and milestones along the way that are met. And if not met, then you have to sit down and have some type of contract for success to deal with the shortfalls. That doesn't mean that you just simply say, hey, you're not doing what you said you do, I'm taking all the money. You have to have some type of contract for success to make that program as well as that individual organization successful, because at the end of the day, the ultimate goal is to benefit the citizens in the area, and in that case, for public safety. And so that's what my suggestion would be, is to sit down and say, we have to make sure that along the way there are adequate checks and balances so that the money is not misused. You're well aware that I worked for South Carolina First Steps, and anytime there was a disbursement, I sat down with the directors and we made sure that the overall goal was met, as well as that the checks and balances were put in place so that the money was not mismanaged.
Mismanaged and misappropriated. Do we know of any other evidence of that in the city of North Charleston besides the gun violence grant issue?
In terms of funding that
Yes,
is
sir.
coming, well, there has been. Let's take a look at just the gun violence issue itself. That was a part of a larger funding package that came into the city. So it wasn't just the $1.3 million that came in. That was a part of a larger disbursement. Now, I'm not aware of the exact total amount of the larger disbursement, and no one's even talking about, outside of the 1.3, the rest of the money that came in. Um, the money should have been a part of the total package, and we shouldn't be focusing on just the 1.3. We should be focusing on the total amount that came in and whether or not there was some mismanagement in the other areas. For instance, when we take a look at contracts from North Charleston, we know in the past, out of about $100 million in contracts, uh, about 50% of the population only receive 2% of the contracts. To me, that's gross mismanagement, because it doesn't allow all citizens to be able to benefit from the contracts that are given from the city's procurement office.
Right.
When we take a look at previously issues where rather than the procurement director signing the contracts, the mayor of the city signed the contracts. That is not a good checks and balance system, because if you got a procurement director and they are unwilling to sign a procurement contract, then to me that says that we need to find out why. But again, I'm running for city
Right. Right.
council
Right.
to not look at the overall situation for the city, but for District 5 and the constituents there. I will contribute to the overall city, but that is the mayor's job to manage those funds.
And I know you're not on city council yet, and you don't work for the city of North Charleston as an employer. You're just a private citizen, of course.
Correct.
But let me ask you this, John. How many of those contracts were signed by the mayor versus the procurement director?
If it's one, it's more than should be. The exact numbers I do not know, but I do know that several were signed by the mayor versus the procurement director. And this is in a previous administration.
Sure.
Now, it's not this administration. It's just that those are the kinds of things that we have to take a look at, because there has to be fundamental fairness across the board for all contracts, jobs as well.
Well, let me go right there, John. You talked about fairness, so and you talked about obviously the 2%. So, how much of those particular contracts were going to, say, African Americans or Latinas or Asians?
African Americans, well, let me say it like this: non-whites received about 2% of the contracts. That means if you, for example, had $100 million in contracts, $2 million would have gone to the non-white businessmen who applied for contracts. That, to me, is quite an imbalance. There should be more parity within the city when it comes to giving out contracts and the benefits that arise within the city. For instance, when we talk about recreation, recreation has happened in areas when we look at the senior citizen centers.
Right.
They weren't done uniformly across the board initially. Eventually, but we've spent so much money in other areas that constituents in the South End did not receive much of the benefit from those new centers. And again, that's an issue for the mayor. As a city council person, I would concentrate primarily on the district, which is District 5, the roughly 10,000 citizens that are there. That would be my major concern, because they're the ones who's sending me there to represent them.
Yes, sir. And I'm so sorry about these gnats out here, John, into the viewers.
I know how it is. I know how it is.
Ooh, they're getting me today. But let me ask you this, Dan. When it comes to those senior centers, and I know they just built a senior center right there on Meeting Street Road, leading up to Rivers Avenue. But where exactly do you need a senior center right now in District 5?
Well, we have one in District 5.
Okay.
The Senior Citizen Center in District 5 was built right next to the fire department on Dorchester Road, coming out of Michelle Parkway. In fact, remember there, I go there.
Yes, sir.
And so the Senior Citizen in District 5 has been placed there. It's doing well, and the citizens are enjoying it. I would like to see the very same thing for the other districts, simply in terms of being fair to the other districts in the city. But for District 5, the Senior Citizen Center is not an issue.
Now, John, in your particular district, District 5, how many non-whites actually applied for contracts within the city of North Charleston?
I don't know. We will have to ask North Charleston for that. But whether they receive contracts or not, across the board, it should be done fair so that the businesses that apply for the contracts know when they put a contract in, when they take their time and spend through the procurement process, that it is going to be fair. Whether they receive the contract or not is another issue, but the process itself should be fair. And when you have 50% of the 50+% of the population only receiving 2% of the contracts, to me, it would require further investigation to see whether or not that's a fair process.
Would you ask for a forensic audit on that?
On every dollar at the city. Every dollar at the city. That includes procurement.
Okay.
And the reason, again, is because we need to start with a clean slate. And as a new district representative coming in, I would want the entire process to be looked at in terms of fundamental fairness for all of the citizens in North Charleston, as well as protection for not only the council people coming on, but protection for the present people who are city council representatives, and protection for the mayor. The mayor, in my opinion, needs the protection of a new audit that separates him from any issues that might have occurred from a previous administration. That, to me, is a prudent thing to do.
Well, tell me, what type of bill will you propose for that?
It would simply be a motion that would be put to the city council members and the mayor, since he votes. Well, I'm sorry. In terms of the departments, now the city's funds overall, yes, but in terms of the departments themselves, since the mayor manages those departments, he would not be involved with the voting for that. It would be the council people that are accountable to the citizens to put the motion on the table and to come up with a vote as to whether or not they will do an audit or not. And so I propose the motion.
And now, in 20 seconds, they're only giving me 8 minutes left, so I got to run to some other issues. But let me ask you, how many non-white businesses do you currently have in District 5?
I don't know. I haven't done an accounting of all of the businesses. I can tell you there's about 10,000 residents. About 6,000 of them are registered to vote. But once in the seat, then I would be privy to the kind of information that would allow me to be later on answer those questions.
Now, you talk about those 10,000 people who are actually in your district as residents. So tell me, what is the biggest demographic in District 5?
African American. It is predominantly African American. The next largest population would be white.
Now, excuse me, sir. Now, let me ask you this. What is the historical population trend for that particular district?
Well, it's changed over time. When 50 years ago, when I was a young boy, District 5 would have been predominantly white. But as time has gone on, there have been more non-whites that have moved into District 5. I myself was moved into District 5 over time from further down, closer to the south end. So a lot of people have moved, and that has caused a shift. And the shift has made the district predominantly African American.
Now, how many people from the south end of North Charleston, predominantly African American, have actually moved into District 5 over the past 5 years?
I would not know. The demographic trend for the city as a whole, when we see moving in to North Charleston, has been predominantly white. And that is including on the south end. When you take a look, whether it be at Acabee, Murray Hill, Union Heights, we see that there's been an influx. The same way whites are moving in there, blacks have moved historically into white neighborhoods. When I grew up, Dorchester Wayland was an all-white neighborhood. It has changed over time. So throughout the city, we'll see that the demographics will change. And as a district rep, the demographics is not as important is to make sure that you serve all constituents. So whether the constituent is white, Hispanic, Asian, Black, as their representative, I'm there not to represent them because of their color, but because they are a constituent in the district. When I walk and I talk to the constituents, I have the same conversation with Blacks, whites, Asians, Hispanics, concerning what is important to them and how would they want to benefit as by me being in office representing them. And so the color is less of an issue.
Now, what is the biggest thing that actually changed that district in the past 5 years?
Um, Probably the average income. The average income has allowed, or forced, should I say, certain people to stay in the area because the newer areas, it costs more in terms of the rent or purchasing a home. There are quite a few apartment complexes that are still older complexes, and they're not charging as much. And so, for that reason, we see people in the lower average income will be in the South End district and moving further up closer to District 5.
So, what is the typical price for rent in District 5?
For a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, anywhere from $1,200 to $1,600.
And what is that versus the actual home price for a home?
Average home price will probably be over $400,000 for District 5. Whereas if you go to the South End, it has moved from 150 now to about 300, 320,000, which still is out of the price range for many traditional people who have lived in North Charleston, which is why I've always said we need to increase the per capita income of individuals in the city of North Charleston. What that does is it protects North Charleston citizens in that they will not have to leave the city in order to sustain a living.
Well, then let me ask you this, then, John. What type of jobs do you currently need for District 5?
You said we have or
Yeah,
need?
what would be the ideal jobs right now for District 5 in order for them to reach that capita income?
For me, I would think jobs that pay at least $25 an hour. You work roughly 2,080 hours a year. That's going to give you $50,000 plus, and that is enough so that you can earn a decent living. Of course, you know we've got Bosch that's not far. We've got Boeing that's here, that's in District 5. And so those types of jobs, industrial jobs, have to come back so that we'll be able to sustain a decent living for individuals in the district.
So let me ask you this, then. How many developers have actually built affordable units in District 5 over the past 4 years?
Well, we've got, when you say affordable, it's all relative. We've got on Montague Avenue quite a few that's been built on both sides of Montague Avenue. And those units are priced out of the average income for many North Charleston residents who grew up here. So what we see is a lot of people from outside of the city, outside of the state, now moving into the city. And that's fine. We have no problem with progress. In fact, we want to be at the table and one of the instruments to move progress forward, but we don't want to do it at the expense of leaving those who grew up in North Charleston, who built this city, to be left by the wayside and left behind. They too need to be able to enjoy the fruits of labor, if you will, because the foundation for the city was built on their tax dollar. And so we want to include those people rather than having them left behind.
Well, how should Charleston County create a dedicated funding stream for attainable housing development through zoning and urban planning tools?
Well, when it comes to zoning, when it comes to affordable housing, I've got some ideas regarding affordable housing that are non-conventional, and I can only propose those to see what the other council people say, what the mayor says, what the Department of Housing says in terms of helping to assist citizens that are in North Charleston that would love to stay in North Charleston, but they're simply outpriced at this point. There are some things that can be done, and those are the things that I would talk to my constituents about. And if they agree, then I would present them to City Council so that at least the conversation begins and the dialogue begins on how do we keep our residents here.
Businessman and North Charleston City Council candidate John Singletary, thank you for your time here on Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. Always a pleasure.
Likewise.